In this video, I'm going to test 3 different rolling knife sharpeners at 3 drastically different price points to answer once and for all, are rolling knife sharpeners as good as whetstones, and is there really a difference between the knockoffs and the original? Last year, I made a video for Horl, the company that invented the rolling knife sharpener, and ever since then, people have been asking me these exact 2 questions. So this video is for them, but it's also for me, because I support skepticism on this channel, and I don't want to recommend or assume a brand is the best just because they're the ones offering me a free product or sending me a check. So in order to get a definitive and informed answer, I bought 2 more rolling sharpeners and put them in a head-to-head-to-head showdown to see how they compare to each other. As for all those black lines all over my cutting board, I'll get to that later. I'm looking for 3 things in a knife sharpener. First, does it get my knife sharp enough to cut my food? If it doesn't do that, the rest is just pointless. Second, how much effort does it take? I'm talking time, prep, cleanup. Do I need to learn a new skill? And how much force do I need to use to actually sharpen the knife? And third, are there any extra or recurring costs that I need to worry about when buying a cheaper version that may end up costing me more in the long run? Before jumping into the test, I want to make sure everyone's on the same page. What is a rolling knife sharpener? How do they work? And can they really get your knife as sharp as a whetstone? If you already know the answers to these, just click here and save yourself some time. Otherwise, I'll make this quick. In the most basic terms, to sharpen a knife, you remove metal at an angle to form a sharp edge. There are lots of different types of edges, but the most common edge is going to be a symmetrical V of either 20 degrees or 15 degrees. The steeper the angle, the sharper the blade, and the wider the angle, the more durable. Personally, I tried using whetstones for years. I bought the soft and hard grit stones, but those didn't work. And so I got some more expensive stones, but those didn't work. So then I got a little device that holds the correct angle, some leveling chalk, and a leather strop, but I still just couldn't get my knife as sharp as I wanted to. And I wasn't ready to accept what the problem really was. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. Because, and to be fair, to sharpen a knife on a whetstone at a consistent angle actually takes a significant amount of practice and skill. And that is the problem that rolling knife sharpeners promise to solve. The promise is that with all the important variables fixed, even an untrained home cook can sharpen their knives in minutes, left-handed or right-handed, without any practice or trial and error. This is possible because the magnet holds the knife securely at the desired angle, and you're just in charge of rolling the vertical sharpener up and down the blade. Then as you roll the sharpener, the grinding disc will rotate in order to grind the edge in the proper direction at the proper angle. Depending on your desired level of sharpness, you can even swap the grinding discs on rolling sharpeners for fine grit stones to match the same level of super paper cutting sharpness that an equally fine grit whetstone would produce if it was used perfectly. And the final promise of rolling knife sharpeners that makes them even better than whetstones is that you only have to buy them once, because the diamond grinding disc lasts a lifetime, whereas whetstones wear down over time and need maintenance or replacing. But like I said before, all of the effort and replacement costs don't really matter if it doesn't do what it's supposed to, and just sharpen your knife. So time to put these to the test and see if they make the cut. For those of you who clicked ahead, welcome back. I'll just give you a few seconds to reorient yourselves, maybe like and subscribe to say thanks for all the time I saved you. Now, let's get to the test. For each sharpener, I'm going to test performance, ease, and durability. For performance, this is how sharp a knife should be to make prep quick, safe, and enjoyable. I don't need a knife that can slice paper and shave my arm, and if you have scissors and a razor, then you don't either. As far as I'm concerned, if a rolling sharpener can get my knife sharp enough to cut through a whole carrot in a single smooth motion, then it passes the performance test. And to test the ease and durability of each sharpener, I'm going to return a knife to this level of sharpness 10 times after completely dulling it with a metal file. Don't worry, I'm not going to destroy your ears with a knife grinding ASMR. I'll go ahead and mute all of the knife grinding sections for the rest of this video. But while I'm at it, that's one of my fanciest Japanese knives. So I'm just going to swap that out for a stainless steel knife and keep the fancy Japanese knife as a control, so that each time I'm done sharpening the stainless steel knife, I can use the Japanese knife to compare and make sure that I've returned the stainless steel knife all the way to the original level of sharpness. And I know those black lines are distracting, but I promise it'll all make sense in a minute. First up, let's start with the original rolling knife sharpener, the Horl. Made in Germany and coming in at $190 for the multiple angle option, you can sharpen at either 15 degrees or 20 degrees. The Horl also has interchangeable ends that you can swap out for whetstones or heavier grit pieces, depending on your desired sharpness. But to keep this test even, I'm gonna stick with the diamond grinding disc and ceramic honing disc that comes standard on the Horl 2. As I mentioned before, I have been using this Horl for over a year now, and I also bring it over to my friends' houses to sharpen their knives as kind of a passive-aggressive way to tell them your knives are dull and I hate cooking with them. But they end up with sharp knives, so everybody wins. That does mean that the Horl starts with a disadvantage, but it says on their website the diamond grinding disc lasts a lifetime, so with 10 sharpenings, it shouldn't really make a difference. Even with a year of sharpening under its belt, the Horl still returned the completely dull knife to sharp in about 2 to 3 minutes. Obviously, this would probably be faster if the knife edge wasn't completely destroyed, but honestly, it was faster than I expected. After 10 rounds, the Horl was still working at about the same rate, and I had no problem getting the knife back to carrot cutting condition. The one limitation with the Horl though was with a specific knife shape. By adding a cutting board below the roller, I was able to sharpen my cleaver with a thicker blade, and the magnets of the Horl were strong enough to hold my paring knife in place as I sharpened that, but if the knife had a bolster on the end of it, it would stop the Horl from reaching all the way to the heel. To be fair, this was a problem for all of the rolling knife sharpeners, so even field, but if you only use knives with bolsters, that is a case where whetstones are going to be superior. But besides that, the Horl did pass my tests for performance, ease, and durability. Next up, the cheapest option, the Mille Loyue, which, although the name just looks like a nightmare Scrabble hand, it comes in over 9 times cheaper than the Horl at a suspiciously low $19.99. But that's why we're here, to find out the truth behind that price. Like the original it's modeled after, this also comes with a 15 and 20 degree base with removable discs. These discs though are held in place by little magnets with little tabs to prevent rotation as you sharpen. One of these magnets wasn't glued in, but it didn't really affect the performance of the sharpener, and I can't really see it getting worse over time, so I'm just gonna leave that out of the review, but I thought you should know. The sharpener also comes with 4 extra discs, for a total of 3 1000 grit discs and 3 400 grit discs, which, emphasis on the air quotes here because, well, I don't want to spoil anything. Let's get back to it. The first thing that I noticed about the Mille Loyue is it doesn't roll as smoothly as the Horl. You can just feel that the materials and gears aren't really as high quality, but because those are inside and it's really the grinding discs that are doing the work, it doesn't really affect the performance, just the user experience. Out of the box, this knife sharpener worked pretty well. Honestly, it was the same as the Horl. It returned the knife to carrot cutting condition in 2 to 3 minutes. Now, the keen viewer will notice that the black lines are missing from the cutting board. That's because I actually tested this sharpener first, and those came from the mid-range sharpener, which it's a whole thing, but just know you didn't miss anything. After 3 sharpening sessions, I noticed it was taking a lot longer to sharpen the knife. And at this point, the discs both felt pretty smooth. So I replaced the discs and started again. But after another 3 cycles, the grit had worn off the discs again. My first thought was maybe I did something wrong, because I must admit, I stopped reading the manual when I realized it was basically just one giant run-on typo, which not only pretexts the tool, but ake alans you to get a sharper tool, and then you can do fine cutting worky. So I went back to check, and one thing did jump out at me in between the typos. One of the discs should have been a ceramic polishing disc, but my Mille Loyue roller didn't have a ceramic polishing disc, or a side with concentric circles like the manual suggested. But you know which sharpener does have a ceramic honing disc with concentric circles? The original. So I'm guessing that if they're misrepresenting the ceramic polishing disc and just using a soft grit disc, then the diamond grinding disc is probably not real diamonds. So that's why they give you extras, and that's why they only last 3 knives. So while the cheapest option did sharpen 3 times per disc, the magnets were not strong enough to hold my smallest knives while sharpening. Plus, I would need to replace the entire kit every 9 times I use it, so it does not pass for ease or durability. And now for the mid-tier option. There were tons of brands in the $90 to $130 range, but the Tumbler is easily the most popular, and I wanted to get something on the higher end of that spectrum so that it would compete with the high end and separate itself from the low end. Personally, I see these ads all the time, so I figured this would be a great mid-tier option. It's worth mentioning here that I did not think this test would be very good if I had 2 examples from Horl, but they do sell a mid-tier option that's only $10 more expensive than the Tumbler, but the base only has a 20-degree angle, which was the angle I was using for this test anyway. I just didn't want to use 2 of the same brand because using 3 brands has a bit more variety and gives you a more honest result. Out of the box, this has the same 15 and 20 degree base with a high grit grinding disc and a steel honing disc. These ends, however, are not removable. and just holding this in my hand, it honestly felt the worst of the three. The gears were super sticky, the column isn't really flush with the ends, so it shakes and makes some noise, and it makes this squeaky noise as you roll it. And lastly, it's a bit hard to show on camera, but the roll had a few inconsistent bumps in it when the axle had some uneven tension. But theoretically, none of those should affect the performance, just the user experience. Theoretically. Besides a squeak and jittery roll, the mid-tier option did return the knife to carrot cutting condition in about the same time as the other two. Like the cheapest option, the sharpening time did get a little bit longer as the initial grit of that grinding disc wore down, but for the mid-tier option, it kind of plateaued after 4 to 5 cycles. Coincidentally, the squeaking sound also stopped at about 4 to 5 cycles, which was a pleasant surprise. What was an unpleasant surprise was that I started noticing these black lines on my cutting board. That's when I noticed that the squeaking really stopped because the tumbler stopped tumbling. For the majority of the blade, the sharpener was just sliding down the blade, which not only sharpens the edge in the wrong direction, but also drags the rubber wheels along the surface of my cutting board, which kind of ruined my cutting board. But I was gonna sand down this cutting board after this test anyway because of all the metal filings. So I just embraced the modern art and finished the 10 cycles. Dragging the sharpener down the length of the knife obviously took much longer than the first 5 passes, but it also significantly didn't get the knife as sharp. You can see here how the sharpened stainless steel knife compares to the original Japanese knife that we left sharp as a control. And just out of curiosity, I also went back and used the Horl to see if it could clean up after the tumbler, and pretty quickly the knife did return to its original sharpness. So the mid-range option was not good for knife sharpening, but it was great for modern art. Personally, I think a rolling knife sharpener is a solid investment for someone who wants to sharpen their own knives, but is maybe not enthusiastic about the cost, mess, or learning curve of whetstones. But with so many knockoffs out there, I recommend saving up for the original so that when you spend your money on a knife sharpener, you're getting a product that works and a product that lasts.